Today, the Security Service of Ukraine and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense organized, as one coughing old man says, some action, some real movement in the area of the Crimean and Chonhar bridges. Both bridges were subjected to external impact today, let's put it that way. And we know for certain that today, between 6 and 9 in the morning, the Crimean, also known as the Kerch Bridge, was closed off by the occupiers because an explosion occurred under one of its supports. Later in the day, media reported an attack by a Ukrainian naval drone called Magura, which was armed with missiles. He also tried to attack the Crimean Bridge. According to Militarny, the Russian drone Lancet struck the bow of the Magura and disabled it. This can be seen in the video that was released today by the occupiers. However, the paradox is that while the Lancet was able to immobilize the Magura, it was not able to destroy it. There are not even any visible signs, no traces of ignition or smoke. In other words, later on, this drone, the video cuts off, could have carried out another attack. At least I'll repeat once again, there were no external damages that would have prevented this. Also, the media reported today that there was smoke and a fire in the area of the Chonhar Bridge in Crimea. Let me remind you, this is the northern part of Crimea, the Crimean Isthmus, which connects Crimea with mainland Ukraine, and the first satellite images have already appeared. The main questions that experts, military personnel, and journalists around the world are now asking are, how was this possible? How was this possible after the activity on Sunday, which was organized by the Security Service of Ukraine at 5 Russian military airfields at once? Now we are witnessing the same kind of active and incendiary activity, but this time in Crimea. By the way, it should be noted that the occupiers had warned about the danger that Crimea is in a zone of potentially maximum attention from the Ukrainian defense forces. And they said one should expect some kind of dirty trick from the Ukrainians in Crimea in the very near future. And this time they were not mistaken. Our adversaries were not mistaken. Indeed, all of this has happened and continues to happen. The key theories about what happened today. So, today, the Security Service of Ukraine, let's start with the facts, released a statement that one of the supports of the Kerch, also known as the Crimean Bridge, was hit as a result of an explosion equivalent to 1,100 kilograms of TNT. A video from Russian surveillance cameras was distributed today by the Security Service of Ukraine. In other words, there's also a scandal about how the Security Service of Ukraine could have gained access to the closed-circuit cameras of the Russian Crimean Bridge. How could this have happened at all? Well, hackers have broken in once again. The Security Service of Ukraine infiltrated and the enemy is bewildered. For how long, really? They realize this could have been going on for an extended period of time. That is, they could have quietly infiltrated Russian systems and sat there silently observing for many, many months. Right now, this has caused a huge scandal and a lot of infighting. That's basically the first thing that's happening. Well, let's get back to the SBU statement. So the SBU gives us rather dry information stating that they carried out a new, unique operation and, as they report, planted explosives underwater on the supports of the Crimean Bridge. The explosive device was detonated on June 3rd, Tuesday at 4:44 a.m. local time. The bridge was closed from 6 to 9 in the morning. Then the occupiers reported that they had supposedly resumed traffic on the bridge, but at 3 p.m. local time, movement across the Kerch Bridge was once again halted. According to the SBU, the morning explosion severely damaged the supports, plural, the supports of the bridge, at the level of the seabed. 1,100 kilograms of explosives in TNT equivalent contributed to this. In fact, the bridge is in an emergency condition according to the SBU statement. God loves a trinity, and the SBU always sees its plans through to the end and never repeats itself. Previously, we struck the Crimean Bridge twice, in 2022 and 2023. That's why today we continue this tradition underwater. There is no place for any illegal objects of the Russian Federation on the territory of our state. Therefore, the Crimean Bridge is an absolutely legitimate target, especially from the point of view that the enemy uses it as a logistical artery to supply its troops. Crimea is Ukraine, and any manifestations of occupation will receive our tough, firmly decisive response, wrote Lieutenant General of the Security Service of Ukraine, head of the SBU, Vasil Maliuk. Well, Maliuk is truly becoming almost a legendary figure for the world's media and for our adversary first and foremost, because this is already the second successful operation that was obviously prepared over a long period of time. Let me remind you, the previous operation called Spider Web, Spider Net, was prepared by the SBU for a year and a half. How long this operation was prepared for and what code name it received have not yet been disclosed to us. However, military experts, particularly Defense Express, have tried to find out what means might have been used to strike the Kerch Bridge. The first theory is the use of combat divers, but most experts believe this version is untenable because even a group of combat divers would not be able to deliver such a large amount of explosives. Let me remind you, the enemy actively blocked the Kerch Bridge with protective booms and nets, including underwater nets, clearly and deliberately anticipating and expecting that an attack could be carried out using underwater drones or submersibles. It was for this very reason that starting from the first strike on the bridge in 2022, they actively began constructing barriers, including underwater obstacles. Let me also remind you that the Kerch Bridge is guarded by a separate brigade. An entire brigade, meaning more than 5,000 personnel, is protecting the Kerch Bridge. There is also an entire air defense division stationed on both sides of the Kerch Strait. One is on the Ukrainian side in occupied Crimea, and the other is already on the Russian side over there in Taman. Additionally, a full border detachment of the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation is responsible for guarding the Kerch Bridge. And we can see that all these massive forces that were deployed to guard the Kerch Bridge once again failed to do their job and proved ineffective. So the first theory involving combat divers, I'll repeat once more, is considered by experts to be unsubstantiated and highly unlikely. The second theory regarding the use of underwater drones is currently regarded by most experts as the leading explanation. And there are several reasons for this. The key question is, how could an underwater drone reach the Kerch Bridge? And in fact, experts have already found an answer to this question. Well, practically speaking, let's say they have put forward a fairly well-argued hypothesis that most likely the underwater drone was attached to the bottom of one of the ships. Once again, I want to emphasize this is not my theory. These are not my versions. This is what the experts are saying. Most likely it was attached to the bottom, to the hull of one of the ships. In this way, it was able to successfully avoid Russian traps, and thus the ship that passed in very close proximity to the Crimean, or rather the Kerch Bridge, could then detach it at the additional necessary moment and strike, and then continue moving on its own, completely autonomously, most likely powered by batteries on its own power, heading directly toward the Kerch or Crimean Bridge. The publication Defense Express cites at least two types of Ukrainian unmanned underwater drones that could have been used. According to experts, the means of striking the Crimean Bridge could have been underwater drones of the Toloka or Marichka types. There are several types. Again, because there is very little information available online, experts are analyzing the small amount, literally piecing together bits of information that has been released. To anticipate the question of why this information is being discussed, well, it's because this information is available online. Once again, I want to emphasize that the information leaked to the media by the developers of these drones is not classified, so it can be easily found. OSINT analysts are able to uncover a considerable amount of information, including plenty of videos and photos of these very drones online, as well as schematic diagrams and even detailed descriptions of their specifications, tactical and technical characteristics to be precise. So the Toloka drone exists in two main versions. The first version is the TLK-400. It is reported that the length of this drone ranges from 4 to 6 meters. The exact length is unknown. The operational range of this drone, both on the surface and underwater, is 1,200 kilometers. That is, it covers the entire Black Sea area. The warhead weighs up to 500 kilograms. However, there is a second, heavier version, the TLK-1000. It has a length ranging from 4 to 12 meters, with the exact specifications unknown. It has a range of up to 2,000 kilometers in both underwater and surface modes, and a payload capacity of 5,000 kilograms. In other words, this second drone fully fits within the parameters of 1,100 kilograms in TNT equivalent, which was officially stated. I repeat, this is an official statement from the security service. Another option that could have been used is the underwater drone Marichka, which has been announced, and you can easily find plenty of information about it online. There is even a whole video of it as well as photos. There is a huge amount of information online, and all the world's media, all the major American and British TV channels, BBC, CNN, CBS, and others, have run entire segments about it. This is not classified information. I'll repeat once again. The Marichka drone, according to the data published online, is 6 meters long, about 1 meter in diameter, and has a range of 1,000 kilometers both underwater and on the surface. This drone is capable of carrying a payload of over 1,000 kilograms. Also, as we can see, it falls within the parameters that were established and reported by the Security Service of Ukraine. The vessel, as experts from Defense Express suggested, was moving toward a Russian port on the Sea of Azov and could have been directly. This drone, if it was indeed delivered in this way, like a remora fish, could have detached itself after passing through those very last protective booms at that moment. Well, and here, naturally, the key question is the extent of the damage to the bridge. Let's wrap up this whole story. Judging by the video, which cuts off, the extent of the damage is currently unknown to us. We have only seen one of the photographs that appeared online. According to it, we can see here damage to the barrier of the automobile section of the Kerch, or rather Crimean Bridge. There you can see twisted structures, traces of fire, and a damaged road surface on the automobile section of the Crimean Bridge. The enemy, of course, claims that there is nothing wrong, that the bridge is intact, but this photo already disproves that. So there is some damage. In addition, let me remind you, the explosion occurred underwater. Only now, apparently, the enemy will try to investigate the damage using combat divers and aquanauts. They will be assessing it, but this will not happen instantly. And again, even if we don't currently see this damage above the waterline, it could still be quite serious. And although the enemy declared that the bridge was open, it is completely safe. As always, our enemy is lying, of course. And therefore, I will repeat once again, at this moment, we do not know the extent of the damage to this bridge. We don't know. It could be serious, or in fact, it might have only affected the protective barriers that the enemy had previously installed on the bridge supports. That is a big question. Now, regarding the Chonhar Bridge, which connects the temporarily occupied Crimea with mainland Ukraine, this was reported by the Telegram channel Crimean Wind, which is linked to Ukrainian intelligence citing satellite images. According to Crimean Wind, the fire broke out in the area near the railway line on the Chonhar Peninsula, not far from the village of Ataman. The fire erupted in the immediate vicinity of the bridge. Subscribers of Crimean Wind are reporting communication disruptions. Since 12 o'clock noon, internet outages have been observed in the populated areas of northern Crimea. This is a classic measure carried out by the FSB. They always do this. So I'll repeat once again, and that's why, well, there's nothing new here. Next. The Militania project reports that in the attack on the Crimean Bridge, in addition to probably, I repeat, we do not know for sure, probably an underwater drone, a Magura Sea drone, was also involved, which is used by the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and as Militani writes, an air defense drone equipped with M9M missiles. These are exactly the same. The missiles that were used to shoot down 2 Russian Su attack aircraft in the Novorossiysk area, which was spotted by a Russian operator, a reconnaissance UAV. Shortly after the SBU blew up one of the bridge supports with a large explosive charge, the Russian military used a Lancet loitering munition to intercept targets. striking the bow of a naval drone, which resulted in it being immobilized. But I repeat once again, the video shows that even if the damage was insignificant, the drone missed. There you have it. Additionally, the Magura drone operator performed an evasive maneuver, which is why the Lancet was unable to hit and destroy the Magura drone. It comes to a stop. Again, it might have stopped not because it was hit, but because it was immobilized. Maybe the operator did this on purpose to mislead the enemy. The video is very short, it cuts off, and as of now, we don't know what happened to this drone next. In any case, all these operations carried out by Ukrainian intelligence, we can see that two Ukrainian special services, both the SBU and the GUR, were involved here, demonstrate the sharply increased capabilities of Ukrainian intelligence, the depth and, let's say, the strategic intent behind the planning of such operations, which once again leave the enemy at a loss, despite obvious concerns that Crimea and the Crimean Bridge could be targeted. Once again, the enemy was unprepared for such an operation. And even if the results of this operation turn out to be limited, it clearly shows us that we are capable of striking. If it didn't happen this time, it will definitely happen next time. It's obvious that analyzing this operation will allow us to take mistakes into account. It's clear that the enemy will be prepared, let's say, for the possibility that this could be carried out in exactly this way, following the scenario suggested by the experts from Defense Express and Militarny. But every time, as we know, a new and unexpected solution is found, something novel. And this is that very symmetrical war in which Ukraine once again proves to be stronger. That's the news we have for today, friends. Take care of yourselves. We'll keep following how events unfold. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so that our smart and sophisticated audience keeps growing. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the armed forces. Glory to the Ukrainian Special Forces. Glory to the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces. Glory to the Security Service of Ukraine and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense. As always, Major Taras BEREZOVETS of the Ukrainian Army was with you. Until next time. Bye-bye.